Wind and solar projects that will yield 66 gigawatts of power are now in various stages of construction, and many of these projects will be paired with battery storage. Gas to power capacity is also in the renewables pipeline. Well, this information is contained in the 2023 South African Renewable Energy Grid Survey compiled by Eskom. So to unpack these developments, I'm now joined by columnist Nick Headley. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining me, and good morning to you. Let's perhaps go through this survey and what it reveals, I suppose, about the potential implication for grid planning and investment.
Thanks, Tamilo. As you say, we have nearly 67 gigawatts of projects hoping to come online in the years ahead. That's massive. I think surprised a lot of people. It would more than double South Africa's installed power generation capacity in just a couple of years. The interesting thing is that this pipeline is actually pretty much exactly what energy system modelers say we need to install by 2030 to ensure security of supply kind of long into the future. So it's very encouraging. And we could end load shedding forever from 2025 because these projects will take a bit of time to come online. The catch is that we've only got about 25 gigawatts of available grid capacity left, just because South Africa has not been investing in things like power lines and substations like we should have. But it indicates to planners where we need to be investing in transmission power lines and things like that. But we also do have enough grid capacity to bring on a huge amount of energy in the next 2 years, which is very encouraging.
Yeah, but is there will from, the South African government, from Eskom, to get us to where we need to be? You mentioned 2025, others such as Fikile Mbalula politically have mentioned that before the end of the year, we'll see the end of load shedding. The question is there will in this country to end load shedding? It's an
interesting question, and I think the answer is it almost doesn't really matter anymore because the market is kind of in trying to end load shedding and reduce reliance on the grid. Companies themselves are kind of ending load shedding by investing in their own power. And there are ways around the transmission problem, even if there's not really political will from the government. So what's quite encouraging is there's a lot of investments in things like big batteries in the Northern Cape, which is running out of grid capacity. And that actually frees up a lot of grid capacity. So even if the government is very slow, which we know it has been on these things for a very long time, companies themselves in trying to free themselves from load shedding are actually solving the problem. So if there is political will, great, that'll speed things up and make things a huge amount easier. But if there's not, the market's kind of solving this on its own already.
And also, I suppose, what are the steps now, as you mentioned, just to break it down, that South Africa, I suppose, step by step needs to take to ensure that there is capacity?
Well, we need to quite urgently invest in new transmission infrastructure. So things like power lines to particularly the Cape provinces, which have run out of transmission infrastructure. So that needs to get going very urgently. It'll take quite a few years to get those things up. There are some quite quick and easy wins we can do. For instance, big batteries now can be used as sort of transmission infrastructure, and those can be installed quite quickly. They soak up excess power generation during the day, and then release it in the evening during peak demand. So they can be used to free up a lot of grid capacity. And same thing with substations, which are relatively easy to build, and increasingly power producers themselves are taking on that role and investing in substations rather than waiting for Eskom to do so. So grid planners need to get moving on this as soon as possible, but in the meantime, things are moving really, really fast, which is encouraging. If we can get through the next 2 years of load shedding, we hopefully will be fine from 2025.
Right. There's also, some voices coming in saying that the survey has further reinforced the need here for co-location of technologies like wind, solar and batteries, this to optimize the use of the grid. Nick, do you agree with this?
Absolutely. And I think what's quite encouraging in the survey is there is quite a lot of that planned. There's a lot of co-location, specifically of wind and batteries and solar and batteries. Not so much of solar and wind, but it makes complete sense because wind and solar tend to generate power at different times. So if you put them in the same location, you are maximizing the use of that grid capacity.
All right, well, we'll leave it then. Thank you so much for joining us. Columnist Nick Headley, thank you so much for your timing, weighing in on this discussion with me. The Renewable Energy Grid Survey pointing to 66 gigawatts development pipeline in South Africa.